The way we lead impacts the way people live. This world needs truly human leadership. I'm Brent Stewart, your host. Thanks for listening. This podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. You can connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, and find our podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. You're listening to a Truly Human Leadership podcast refresher, where we reshare insight from podcast episodes from the past. Dr. Anita Sanchez is a very good friend of ours at Barry-Wehmiller. She came into our circle a few years ago through another great friend of ours, Bill Urey. She's a graduate of our communication skills class, which is also known as Listen Like a Leader, and has become one of our professors to help us impact lives by teaching others how to be better listeners. Later on in this podcast, you'll hear Anita talk about how those skills have made a difference in her own life. Anita has been training and coaching leaders for 4 decades in diversity and inclusion, leadership, culture, and positive change. She is a member of the Transformational Leadership Council alongside such names as Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, John Gray, Lisa Nichols, and Lynn Twist. You can find out more about her on her website, anita-sanchez.com, or follow her on Twitter at Dr. Anita Sanchez. Anita has recently released a new book, The 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times, drawing upon the indigenous wisdom of her Mexican-American and Aztec Indian heritage. Let me read a quick passage from the introduction about her motivation to write the book. Look around you. Look around in your community, town, city, state, country, and the world itself. Look at our media, our politics, our businesses, our culture. You will see that people act as if they are separate, alone, and have no relations. As a result, we think and behave in ways that cause needless suffering, further division, and reckless destruction. We act as if our behavior does not impact the circle of life, and as a result of that denial, we are out of harmony. How do we get back into harmony? Indigenous wisdom tells us that it is by living in connection with all life, with all people, the earth and spirit. The 4 sacred gifts can give us the support and guidance to get there. Myself and Mary Rudder have a very candid conversation with Anita. She tells some very personal stories about how she came upon the 4 sacred gifts, which are ultimately skills and qualities every truly human leader should have when they're looking to create a world where everybody matters.
Well, I'm Dr. Anita Luisa Teresa Medina Sanchez, and everyone calls me Anita. And I actually grew up on the other side of the state from all of you in Kansas City for the 16 years of my life. Yes. And I have this fondness for Missouri, the Show Me State, and all my family is still there. I'm the only one that left. I have a PhD in organization development, which is a combination of business and psychology. So I'm passionate about human systems, and I love particularly bridging indigenous wisdom, spirituality, and science of business. And so now for over 40 years, last October I celebrated 40 years of running my own company. And I work with global corporations, executives and their teams all over the world.
And what is it that you try to get them to see, do, change? Yes.
There are a number of reasons they bring me in, but I think the primary thing that I do is I continually ask back because I inspire them, the leaders, and their team members to discover and really trust their gifts for the specific purpose that they can be a life-giving connection to themselves and to everyone else. And that's really important to me. And so many of my clients have had for decades keep bringing me back, and they go, when you say life-giving, we really get it now, that we truly impact each other. And so we need to be conscious of that.
What kind of process do you use to help them discover that?
Yes. Well, you'll like this because it's very much an appreciative approach. I draw on many different methodologies. However, my foundational, the key one I use is out of positive psychology, because I know it's not a denying that there are problems or issues. We must deal with those. However, when we get into that imbalance where we're just totally cycling down on ain't it awful, all the problems, without being pulled by a vision, by what it is you want to create in the world. So business has amazing things that they want to create in the world, and they can do such amazing good in the world. To keep that strong and owned by everyone, that means everyone must be participating. Everybody's gifts must be part of it. So I use a positive psychology methodology in pretty much everything I do, including some things that are pretty difficult, including when we go to organizations when they end up having to downsize. Still using a very appreciative and doing everything they can to ensure that the people find another place in their organization or within another, or in race relations. I do a lot of work in race relations, which this country sorely needs. And why I love doing the work inside of business. People go, in business? I started doing race, diversity, inclusion work in business back in the 80s, because what I saw was that inside of business, leaders have the ability to create a culture, an environment that says everybody truly does matter. And so that is just a love that I have. So I bring people together across all sorts of different race, culture, gender, orientation, nationalities. And I've been able to do it mainly with Fortune 100 corporations. So those big corporations have taken me all over the world. But how I started had some beautiful part to it, which was really learning from the elders, from the Indigenous elders in my life growing up as a little girl. But there also was the difficult part, because I also endured 9 years of sexual abuse. And then also my father was murdered when I was 13. It was a race-related murder. He was mistaken for a black man. And where early that day, a black man and a white man were having an argument. And it was in the mid-'60s, of course, during a lot of racial upheaval. Unfortunately, some similarity to now, although some things have truly changed. Nonetheless, the white man returned and only saw the profile of my father, who was fairly dark complected, and he fired 3 bullets and killed him on the spot. So I also know that I do this work because we have to stop the killing. We really are each other's brothers and sisters. And I know that's hard for some people to feel that when people might be saying things that are totally antithetical to what they believe. But at the core, we're all sacred, and we can figure out how to be together. And we have lots of support to do that. Your movement at Barry-Wehmiller, I think, is one of the ways in terms of truly having leaders being true leaders, who care for the people, because that doesn't stay within those business walls. That goes out into their families, into the communities. And us being in nature and seeing how nature and biology operates, it doesn't operate in isolation. It is all connected, and we are part of that. So there's just so many good things, supports there. And I'm just very happy to be able to do my part in sharing my gifts.
What was the motivation to write a book?
Yes. Okay. So the motivation to write a book actually happened with my mother, who passed away 8 years ago. But before she died, she was worried that she would not be known by her great-grandchildren. So I promised her that I would write her book. So we began in the last few months of her life writing her story. And then when she did pass away, it truly took me quite a while, almost a couple of years of grieving. joyful about her life and everything, but really feeling the loss. And when I sat to write, her stories weren't coming out. It was my voice. And so I just asked my mom, I said, Mom, I know you'll understand. You're quite a book reader. I'm going to write my book, and then I'm going to come back and write your book. I'll fulfill my promise. So I began doing that. And then all sorts of life things got in the way, and I went to Massive. And at Massive in Aspen, Bob Chapman's, the Barry-Wehmiller gathering there, with all of the beautiful work that people were doing, I felt the pull in my heart, not just in my head, in my heart, very clearly that, Anita, the time is now. You need to sit down and write your story. Everybody has stories. It matters. And your story and bridging the indigenous wisdom of elders from around the world, from many different traditions, and what is unfolding in this modern world. These gifts, these are very much needed. So I made that commitment, as I told you before, at Massive, and I did it. I sat down and started writing. And now it's almost done. But can I tell you a quick little story? Because this is really a fun story. It tells you how spirit works, how if you stay in action with your vision pulling you. So I made that commitment, and ever since Massive, I was writing every day, getting closer and closer to having the semblance of a book. And then a couple of years ago, with all of the racial things happening, with black men getting killed, policemen getting killed, my heart was breaking, and I began hearing myself say, "Well, how come more leaders aren't stepping up? How come, and then I was like listening to myself and going, well, how come you're not doing more? If you're feeling that way, there must be something more. So I went and spoke at the Transformational Leadership Council, which has about 140 members, very, very big reach people about transformation, like Jack Canfield, Lynn Twist, just Marianne Williamson and others. Anyway, so I pulled my courage together, and I went it, and they approved my proposal, and I went and presented to them. And at the end of that 20-minute type TED Talk, I was sitting with a group of women having lunch, and this one woman just kept asking me questions, just wouldn't let go. She goes, what you talked about should be a book. And I said, well, yes, I have been working on a book. And she just went further and further. And I finally, she was giving me titles, a series, and I'm looking at it. I said, who are you? And she goes, well, I'm a new member. And I said, well, yeah, I haven't met you before. And she goes, yes, I'm a new member, and I'm a publisher for Simon & Schuster, and we want your book. So that's how so I just feel like it was blessed all the way, because who would have thought, first of all, that with my mother's passing would be this gift, this wonderful to write her book, and that would be the inspiration to write mine. And then to have dear friend Bill Urey then invite me to meet Bob Chapman and the Barry-Wehmiller family, who just have embraced me and really supported me, understand that this is a dream and we need to follow our dreams. I teach that to leaders. We teach that to leaders of your own life, whether or not you're in business, you need to follow those. So yes, it's just amazing. And it's sort of funny. It's the different, we all have different things to break through. And so I've talked in front of, and with major CEOs of large corporations, of DuPont, AT&T, Hewlett Packard. Really, but this made me the most nervous, because these are the transformational leaders. The reality is every one of those leaders I just named, or those corporate, every one need to be inspirational and transformational. And so yes, it did take some courage. So I mustered up all that Missouri energy that I could get growing up from my family, and said, no, you can do it. Just go there and do it. And, and it went really well.
Do you have an ideal audience for this book, for this message?
Well, because the stories that I took going through the 4 different gifts have stories from every walk of life. So there are corporate stories in there. There's business stories with leaders. There's the whole stories of Bishop Tutu's in my book. Then there are people who are just everyday people wouldn't be known, but just how they've embraced their life. So I know in marketing they say, oh, your book shouldn't be for everybody, then it's for nobody. But in the ideal world for me is that everyone who's being called will pick up the book and read it, and it'll touch their lives and hopefully affirm them to move forward to create, goodness in the world. And I do hope, it is my hope to have leaders, people who have influence, that important responsibility and joy of influencing others to read this book. Because for 21 years, because I got these gifts back in the mid-90s, for 21 years, I've been using these gifts in working with executives and leaders. And I've worked all over the world, and everywhere I've talked about the 4 gifts, people say, wait a minute, and they write them down. Because they're simple wisdom, the real truth, our heart knows in our heads. And if you use those, whether in the workplace as a leader or outside of your leadership in your family or in your community, they will make a difference. Can I say what the 4 gifts are?
Of course you can. Yeah.
You just stole my question.
Yeah.
It's not a secret. The elders, when they came together from a dream, from a vision, 27 elders came together from all over the world. And that weekend, there was no hatred. There was no anger. They sang and danced and prayed in their different languages. And then they created a hoop with 100 eagle feathers. And inside that hoop, they put in 4 gifts that Spirit told them were needed by all human beings to remember our connection to ourselves and to each other and the earth. And so the 4 gifts are, the first gift is the power to forgive the unforgivable. And I think you let that just go in and we have things that we need to forgive for sure. And then the second gift is the power of unity. Unity that is going to take all of us, not just some of us, all of us, to make this world one where all of us can thrive. The third gift is the gift of healing, the power to heal. Not necessarily in a bit. We all want that. And sometimes, things get healed like magically, but often it's a process. So to see that as a gift, it's a gift to be able to heal. And then the fourth gift is the gift of hope, the power of hope in action, that hope actually is an energy source. And we can choose to have hope or we can choose not to. And for me, given my mission as purpose in life personally is to be a life-giving connection to others and to help others use their gifts so they can be that, that means choosing hope. In spite of facts to the contrary, and we're seeing some of that right now, I actually feel stronger in my hope, in my vision. And even in the desperate darkness of seeing, pain and hurt and death and stuff, I do know that, especially from my childhood, is that the light is brightest when the darkness is the deepest. And so it's calling all of us to do that, to be the light.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, we're sort of at this tipping point. It's like awareness, desire for change. I mean, all of those things lead to us having hope for things being better. And,
yes.
And I think that there are a lot of people like you, like Barry-Wehmiller, like other groups that are really bringing some attention to the need for this, So
I agree.
It's good time, good timing.
It's very good timing. And in these business places where we spend so much time, this is where we can learn to work together, acknowledge each other, appreciate each other with our differences. I mean, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, whether you have a religious belief or you're agnostic, whether, whatever it is, we can care about each other. And we must. And when that happens, it's magical because you realize how much a loss it would be not to have people in your lives. So these different labels and identities, but I'm not going to disregard them. They're important. Ultimately, we're one human family. And it's pretty amazing when we get together. I mean, look at this, having this conversation with you. It's pretty wonderful. And for the people who are listening, it's pretty wonderful that we can make a difference in the world and not have it just be a slogan, but truly by every breath we take, every smile we give to someone, every hand we reach out, appreciation, we can do that. We can make the difference.
What are some, thinking back, Anita, what are some specific stories that maybe you could tell us about your experience in working with different groups to help them be more inclusive, or even in your experience with OCL and helping people listen more, maybe any stories that kind of illustrate some of the things we've been talking about today, experiences
Right.
you've had?
Right. Well, I think there's two. I'll try to not make them draw out too long. I think inside organizations is in part being able to truly, like one of the stories I have in my book was one where it was two groups of people from different parts of the world, and they were having trouble communicating with each other. And so I went and as always, I treat people and systems as whole. So when we were there, I made sure, and I actually had candles lit on each side of the room. And we were in business meeting, and people were sort of like, well, this is a little different. And you could make a container, a way to speak to each other where people are allowed to finish what they're saying, are civil. And what happened at this one event, which changed a lot of things for this corporation, is that one of the people really, and probably more, didn't really know what those candles meant and stuff. And then finally, at the end of the first day, asked, what did they mean? And I said, well, the candles are lit purely, not any specific religious belief. It was basically telling us to do this work isn't just going to require your past experiences or even your future dreams. To do this work of us coming together, whether in the workplace or wherever, it's going to require our higher selves to be present, to have our higher selves present. So everybody just nodded. Well, the next day, you would have loved being there. The next day, this man is not talking and his leg is shaking like crazy. And I'm thinking, gosh, I hope he just gets the courage to speak. And people are being very candid with each other, but, holding each other as they're speaking their truth. But not what I mean is just saying what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, and listening to each other. And then finally he shouts, he goes, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And I looked at him and he goes, that candle is about to go out. And everybody just started laughing because it was like, oh. And so I went over and I relit the candle was about to go out. And everybody looked at him and I said, let's all take a breath. The laughter, and because we knew that something big had just happened. And I said, can you say what's going on? He goes, yesterday I came in as just me. But as we began really working and talking and listening to each other, and those candles, if those candles are going to help us, if our higher selves are going to help us do this, to meet our business goals, to care about each other, then keep the darn candles lit. And that, to me, that was one of those times I thought, oh, gosh, I wish I could clone those folks. But the reality is those folks are everywhere. I may not know it. I may not even believe it. But by gosh, if that's going to help us, let's make sure it's here. So that's a business story. But I'd love to tell you one inside of Barry-Wehmiller with the communication skills training. Because when I took that class, I really took it to heart because there's no way not to. And it just so happened when I came back that August from the class, I was like, okay, you practice everything. And my son had just come back from studying abroad and summer with his girlfriend of 2.5 years. So let me shorten the story. I'm spending more time listening because I realize I listen pretty well to my clients, to my friends. But when it comes to my immediate family, the people I love the most, my husband and my sons, I get busy doing other things, or I half listen. So I committed that I was going to listen. Well, that Labor Day, he came home. There was this sobbing. I ran to meet him, and I was like, looked. I thought, was there blood? There was no blood. And rather than charging into all the questions that I would have, having taken that class, I went, wait a minute, Anita, here's your chance. Be here for your son, not for what you need. So I sat with him and listened, and eventually it came out that his girlfriend broke up with him. So he's experiencing unrequited love. And rather than charging in and what happened, all that, it just was like, I'm here. I'm listening. And just being present. And that lasted for months. Not days, not weeks, for months. And then finally, he told me that at Thanksgiving he went to a party and his ex-girlfriend was there. And he went up to her and he said, I don't want to get back with you, but I do want to. I didn't know what happened. Can you just give me some information? And she said, well, my parents and I had a conversation and we decided that I could do better than you. To which my 21-year-old said, but I'll make money. I'm only 21, but I help my friends in college, and then he said, Mom, I don't know what happened. It came right out of my guts. I looked at her because she shook her head no to the other, and I said, it's because I'm Mexican and Indian, isn't it? And she shook her head yes and walked away. And let me tell you, the mama bear in me was alive. However, the gifts from Barry-Wehmiller's communication skills training was stronger. And I just listened to him. And I stayed silent. And silence is something that was powerful. So I felt like it was the elders, the indigenous wisdom I had learned all my life. And out of this corporation in St. Louis, this thing you created just came together so completely. And my son to this day says that he learned so much about himself by both my husband and I had taken the class, and by us being present, just listen, not telling him what to do, not trying to fix it, and that he realized he has far more muscle, confidence, and the biggest thing that he said he learned, two things, who really are his friends and not, because some of them would say bad things about his ex-girlfriend, and he goes, they're not my friends, she's dealing with what she's dealing with, but they're not, that's not right. And the other thing is that he realized that, he could do anything. If he could handle that, then he could take on whatever he needed to face in the world to be a positive force. And boy, what a gift from a class, right? From a class in hot, humid St. Louis, Missouri in August. And so now my son since then has actually gone to the class too and loves it and just loves it.
Well, what a gift to get to receive that insight at age 21.
Oh, gosh. I just think about all the people's lives that he touches, a huge difference to have that listening skills. So, yeah. So thank you all. I'm limited on words. It's almost like if you could see my face, you would not only see a smile from ear to ear, but I think you could feel the beaming from my heart of a smile of just love and gratitude for you all and for everyone, everywhere, leaders who truly care and are sharing this wisdom and these gifts out.
Don't forget to find us and connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller. And you can find more podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening.